Our culture and our family and our ancestry is deeply a part of who we are. But where I struggled and those perfectionism tendencies hurt me was I didn't have the skills or the support system to develop my own identity inside of our culture.
Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabbir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together.
Today, I'm joined by Dr. Romie Mushtaq, a triple board certified physician in neurology, integrative medicine, and mindfulness. She's the founder of the Brain Shift Institute, currently serves as the Chief Wellness Officer at Great Wolf Resorts, where she leads wellness initiatives for over 12,000 employees. Dr. Romie is also the author of the USA Today and Amazon bestselling book, The Busy Brain Cure. It's been one of my favorite reads. Her work has been featured on NPR, NBC, TED Talks, and in Forbes. It's everywhere. And what makes her voice so powerful is that she's not just speaking from theory, she's lived this. And I'm very excited about today's conversation. Welcome, Dr. Romie.
Amna, thank you for the gracious invitation to be here, to speak with you, to help support your work. And supporting you, it supports me. And I always start by saying this is I thank the listeners. They are consciously putting us between their ears for this next 30 to 45 minutes. And I honor their time and set the intention that we are being of service and that you needed to hear a nugget today that Amna and I are going to share. And by the way, should it be Dr. Amna, Dr. Shabbir? You know, we can say ahead of time, you're Dr. Amna Shabbir, I'm Dr. Romie Mushtaq, but feel free to call me Romie. We're sisters.
I love that you did intention setting, and please call me Amna. I so appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're just going to dive right in, and I'm going to start with a personal question. Do you consider yourself a perfectionist? And what does this word, when we talk about perfectionism and perfectionist, what does this word even mean to you?
I think I have perfectionist tendencies, as does any high-achieving professional. When perfectionism is hurting me, it means I'm in a place of ego and not one in service. I don't know of any high-achieving professional that has achieved career success like you and I have that hasn't had their moments of perfectionism. I have a different angle on it, though, and we're going to double-click into it as we get into this podcast is when we look at the psychological issues around perfectionism and procrastination, I call them the two evil twin cousins in our brain in my book, The Busy Brain Cure. They are a superficial outcome of one, being an ego instead of service, and number two, when you have underlying neuroinflammation in a busy brain, that's when we can go into a default mode, whatever that is, procrastinating, perfectionism, negative self-talk, lack of confidence, and all the classes or behavioral therapy we do on perfectionism won't help us if we don't heal the root cause, which is busy brain. And we'll talk about that.
Well, that is such a fascinating take because that's the first time anybody has framed perfectionism like this for me. So I really appreciate that. Well, since you mentioned it, how about we just go right in. Tell our audience, what is the busy brain? Because when I read your book and when I heard you use this phenomena, in the start, I had my preconceived notions for what it is. But when I read the book, it just was so much clearer. And I was shaking my head and I agreed with so much of what you had shared.
Yeah. Busy brain cure. Busy, the minute we hear it, like the word perfectionism, we think of our to-do lists and all the demands that are on our personal and professional lives. And that's not actually it at all. I think just one doctor colleague to another, and because I know a lot of clinicians will also be listening to this podcast, is I bluntly say this, that in the world of neurology psychiatry, when I was training, we got it wrong. We were treating anxiety, insomnia, and adult onset ADHD as three separate diseases. Busy brain means that an individual, an adult, not children now, let's be clear, adults, are living with chronic stress or have tipped into burnout, and they have neuroinflammation in their brain that is leading to all three of these together. Insomnia, difficulty falling and staying asleep, ruminating anxiety, the racing thoughts or negative loop of spiral or perfectionism that can occur, and as well as adult onset ADHD, inability to focus. I went through that, and you and I will talk about it myself as a neurologist in academic medicine, and ended up in burnout at a time where that wasn't even in the medical lexicon and life-saving surgery. And as I was coming out of it, I realized, like, wow, I was living in this cycle of busy brain. And I thought it was just me. And I actually was living in a lot of shame or confusion around it. And then when my business at the Brain Shift Institute grew, and my primary job is I'm a keynote speaker and serve global organizations and Fortune 500 companies, and seeing this over and over again across every industry, not just healthcare, that high achieving professionals were wearing burnout as a badge of honor or working to the edge of burnout, I realized, wow, this busy brain is a crisis. And that is what led to the research in the book. As you mentioned, we did the busy brain test and neuropsychology test on 17,000 people to be informed of what that looks like. And then the protocol of how to heal the root cause of burnout and busy brain, and tested it in over 1,000 executives. And that was the publication that is in the book, a protocol to literally heal burnout. And I would be so curious, as you do your ongoing research around perfectionism, is when you heal busy brain and burnout, do some of those detrimental sides of perfectionism heal? I strongly feel that it did for me and many of the clients I work for.
I can so relate to many of the things you just mentioned, including, or earlier you mentioned, rumination, self-criticism, and the way we're presenting ourselves in society. And then we talk about the actual protocol, which is so wonderfully shared. Yeah, I mean, those components are so key. So I would love for you to share the Brain Shift protocol. And for everyone who's watching and listening, I would encourage you to go ahead and read the book. I mean, it's great. You really lay all the data out in such a palatable way and in a pleasant way as well.
Okay, I'm going to go into the protocol, but like, I'm curious, one colleague to another, you've got my interest, P. How do you describe perfectionism? I'm like dying to know.
This is a great, like, we're turning the mic around. I love it. The way I look at perfectionism is evolving, and I look at it as part of the air we breathe. I feel that it is from being a view in which we are thinking of perfectionism as an individual's problem, that this is somebody who's meticulous, who obsesses over things and who wants everything in a specific way and order. I am starting to look at it more of as a problem that an entire society and culture are going through. And that is the component when we look at the types of perfectionism. That's the third type of perfectionism, which is socially prescribed perfectionism, which is growing so much. All types of perfectionism, self-oriented, other-oriented, and socially prescribed have grown.
Interesting. Okay.
But socially prescribed, when you look at data, is the one that has grown the most, and alarmingly is the one that's growing the most in younger adults, like 33% rise if you look back.
Okay.
And when we look around us, that's the problem. It's not just Amna is a perfectionist and she is going through all of this.
Okay.
It is when she walks around, everybody expects Amna to be a certain way. Everybody expects Amna to be a certain way as a physician, as an entrepreneur in circles, as a mom, or whatever other role that I have. So when I look at all the roles that I have imbibed in my life, the common thread that I see is this pattern of self-oriented, other-oriented, but most of all, socially prescribed perfectionism.
Okay. So thank you for clarifying that for me, because I do think Busy Brain and the Brain Shift Protocol are more about self-oriented perfectionism. So thank you for educating me on that. And I think if you're a listener, just go ahead and rewind and listen to that, because I'm like, and I think if we don't heal the self-prescribed perfectionism, I imagine the others also easily fall out of balance.
Everything is interconnected, and that's a great view that you've just shared. We love to dichotomize. This is my work, and this is my personal life, and this is self, and this is community. The way I look at things is a lot at this point is very interconnected. Absolutely. So if you don't care for the components of self-oriented, they're going to start bleeding into everything else.
I agree. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, now you were asking me about the Brain Shift protocol of what to do. So really the idea is I actually, the first step is self-awareness. And so for people listening to this who are trying to recover from perfectionism in that old therapy model, I would ask you, do these symptoms sound like you? Difficulty falling asleep because of racing thoughts at night, waking up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to bed. You're absolutely wired and overcharged in the middle of the night. I think those are some of the symptoms. Here are like the 6 things I ask is, do you wake up in the morning and you need excessive amounts of caffeine to find your personality? And then you get to work and there's multiple screens open in front of you and you can't focus. And you're wondering, from TikTok, I'm diagnosing myself with adult onset ADHD. And do I need stimulants or even more coffee? But then you do this and you become anxious and one little thing will happen and you're ruminating and you can't calm down. And you're stuck in a negative spiral of negative self-talk, perfectionist tendencies. It's allowing you to undermine your own confidence. And then you're like, oh, wait, I heard Amna and Romie on her podcast talking today. I'm going to go home and stand on self-care and this brain shift protocol. And you go home and you're like, I can't get the edge off from work. I need a glass of wine or 3. And if you don't drink, you're taking some overpriced supplement from some social media influencer, only to get up and start that stress success cycle all over again. I'm going to stress myself out until I succeed at a goal. It's not enough. What's the next thing I have to do? You and I were talking before we started, and I was asking Amna, I'm like, do you really want to write this book or is it a check mark, for you? And I think that's what people can fall into when they have a busy brain. So that step 1 is that. And if you resonate with any one of those symptoms, step 1 in the protocol then with self-awareness is get your brain score. And we'll put a link here in the show notes to the busy brain test. It's amazing, Amna, right? How many people here in the United States, especially, you can't get anything done without your credit score. Open a bank account, get car insurance, apply for a mortgage, whatever it may be. Yet we don't know our brain score with this snapshot of, am I in chronic stress? Do I have a busy brain? And so we have this pre-validated neuropsychology test that we labeled the busy brain test, and that's how we got research on 17,000 people. So I say get your score. And if your score is above a 30, you're getting into busy brain. If it's above a 40, we know it's chronic stress and you're heading into burnout. And once you're above a 60. And so it's a free test to take on my website and the link on my social media. We're no longer researching. The book is written and done. But that's what we want. And that's step 1 is you need to know where you're starting so then you know where to go from there. So what questions do you have? Because you've read the book and we could spend the whole rest of the hour going over the whole protocol, but you had so many other juicy questions for me. So lead the way.
Well, I just want to say that everything you just shared, again, I can so relate because that's what we feel. We are so deeply exhausted. And the where I see like this intersection of busy brain and perfectionism is also this very like performance-based identity where we feel like we have to always be on and do everything. And then how is that impacting all the shifts that are happening in our brain all the time? And I feel like sometimes I'll open a social media app and I will forget, like, why did I even pick my phone? And that happens. I mean, that still happens.
So that's busy brain, right? We want that quick dopamine high for energy, for motivation. So you pick up a phone to check the text message or open up your favorite social media and that click, and there's that dopamine hit in the brain. But that's what I call the fake dopamine, the quick dopamine. You hit a valley and then you're going to open up your emails and do something again that's screen-based or binge watch another episode of your favorite TV show. Whereas sustained dopamine, when you heal busy brain, we teach you the brain shift so that you're naturally waking up energized on sustained, we call it dosing your brain, sustained dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And that's dosing your brain in a healthy way. And it doesn't involve picking up a phone and opening up a social media app, your text messages, a dating app, or your work emails.
I love that summary. So I'm going to shift the lens a little bit on personal side again. And I'm going to get actually very personal. I don't even talk about this as much myself. And I reached out to you, not only because I deeply admire your work, but also as a fellow South Asian woman. I am really curious, how did your cultural identity shape your journey, especially when we talk about ambition, success, and how you really define your work?
I struggled with that, and I hope any one of our Desi sisters listening will take a moment and reflect on what you and I are sharing right now. Yeah, I'm a proud daughter of immigrants. My dad originally from India, my mother from Pakistan. My dad came over in the 1960s with just $10 in his pocket. That was a time where the civil rights movement was happening here in the United States, and they had just passed legislation to allow immigrants of color to come into the United States because there was a massive shortage of doctors and engineers in the United States. That lack of sense of psychological safety and security any immigrants coming to the United States felt really informed this thinking of the only way you're going to survive in this country is if you become a doctor or an engineer. And so I'm the firstborn child of 3, the only daughter. And literally when I was born, the prayer, the mantra that was recited over me from my dad was, I have one daughter and she will become a doctor. And that's all I knew. And I think people who don't come from our culture scoff at that. But how many children grow up and their parents are an athlete or an actor, and that's around you and it becomes a part of you. And so I knew when my mom was trying to give me dolls when I was growing up, and I really wanted my neon Fisher-Price stethoscope. That was like my emotional support toy, and I was building with Lincoln Logs. Like, I was not that typical South Asian mold, that good girl. We know when you're raised and people are constantly frustrated with you because, Romie, you need to be a good girl. I mean, that was a future leader, innovator, entrepreneur in the making. But back then, I was a pain in the neck to my mother and all my aunties. And I will say our culture and our family and our ancestry is deeply a part of who we are. But where I struggled and those perfectionism tendencies hurt me was I didn't have the skills or the support system to develop my own identity inside of our culture. And so for so long, being the first generation of immigrants, children here, my identity was based on, am I doing things that are going to please my parents because then I'm respecting them because of all the sacrifices they made coming to America as immigrants and working so hard to make sure us 3 children had the best in education. And I didn't know what really my purpose was, what brought me joy. I mean, I will say medicine and healing and science is definitely a part of it. But where you read in the book that I struggled was somewhere in my 20s, I finished medical school. I entered neurology at a time where less than 5% of the brain doctors in the country were women, and I loved it. But I remember my family, like that perfectionism of like, no, I don't know if this is a good specialty for a girl, and they don't really like women in the Academy of Neurology and psychiatry back then. And I was just like, but I dig brain science. I'm pretty good at this. And I also was in a kind of a semi-arranged marriage, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't a match. And incredible gentleman and his family, but it just wasn't me. And that, you see, is built up in the first 4 chapters of the book of this perfectionism that was born from expectations of me and me not giving myself that breathing room to figure out who is Romie, independent of my parents and my cultural expectations. And it was that constantly never being able to meet the bar of cultural expectations that was hurting me. And the minute I let go of all of that, and today I can say proudly, I'm a woman defining my decades. If you're watching the video podcast, I proudly tell people I am 50. Because when I was raised, I don't know if this is the same with our Desi sisters. Leave a message in the comments on the social media channel, wherever you're watching this. If you were beyond 25, you were already a has-been. Like, you should be married. By 30, you should have kids. And there was really no life. And at 50, you're like on your deathbed or as a grandmother, and you're a forgotten woman in society. And I'm like, look at me. I've never felt more in my life purpose, standing in my divine power, feeling sexy, feeling vibrant. Also, candidly, I'm like looking at the screen going, oh, I'm overdue for my Botox right here. Like, that is being authentic. And I call that defining your decades. And the sooner you do that in life, the more you break away from this, I want to be the perfect South Asian sister, daughter, granddaughter, niece, wife.
What I would say is that we've been handed a prescription and a checklist, like you said. And the funny part is that the checklist never ends. It just keeps going.
Thank you for saying that. I thought it was just in my family. No,
it does not
end. could I have a candid conversation? I think for any woman listening. So like I had incredible career success in my 20s and 30s in medicine and achieved a level of success that most doctors may not even. And then started all over again as an entrepreneur. And toward the end of my 40s, here I am, that prescription checklist for entrepreneurs, right? And at 50, I'm like, I believe in a second chance and love. Like, this is my era to have that. Like what other girls were told and prescribed in their 20s. That's what I mean by defining your decades. But thank you for telling me I wasn't the only one with a checklist, because what happens is when you grow up with that never-ending checklist, my checklist is so divergent from what Desi culture expected of me that people don't even know how to respond to me. I call it in mindfulness is just another vibration of consciousness. I have compassion, but people just don't understand my drive or that I have joy being of service as a keynote speaker, as a consultant in corporate America, as a chief wellness officer. That's my purpose. And if that's on my checklist, could you just let me be in the corner?
Yes. I love that you said that. And another funny part of that checklist is that even if you continue to follow all the steps, it still doesn't end.
Okay.
It's never enough. And so one of the things I have shared personally, and I really want to bring it up again, is when I had really bad postpartum depression, I never talked about it because there was a very real social cultural element. Like you just don't talk about that stuff. And so everything that you've shared, like to the point, if we just go backtrack way back when, and I will say this as well, because it's such a great time to have this conversation with you. If you really want to recognize what are the elements of your life that you have to work on, I don't know if this was true for you, Romie, it's start writing a book and all your stuff will start to come up that you're really...
It does. It
I
does.
don't want to... Yeah.
I will say this is don't write the book to be therapy. I told my personal story in my book because I have had therapists. So that's something we don't talk about in our Desi culture. I thank goodness. When I was going through my divorce, my attorney saw that I was in a very competitive fellowship and I had a bright career ahead of me and that I was really choosing my career over being a traditional Asian housewife. And nothing wrong with that if that's your path. That wasn't my checklist. That was the checklist society expected of me. I was so thankful. He said, in order to represent you and finish this divorce, I want you to go see a therapist. And since that time, I am a firm believer in therapy. It has made me a better woman, a better leader, understand what my personal checklist is, how to be a better woman in romantic relationships. We need to normalize that conversation and stop the stigma of, oh, I mean, girl, I'm still at Desi parties. I start avoiding them now. Like, oh my God, did you see she was in that interview and talked about therapy? She's not right in the head. Keep your daughter away from her. She's a bad influence. And meanwhile, Amna, you and I know with us real talk, like, this is for the next generation of sisters. Make your own list and therapy works. Don't wait until you're burned out like I was and in the middle of a divorce or Amna suffering from postpartum depression. It is healthy to work with a therapist. I have access to some of the most successful world athletes, C-suite executives of Fortune 100 companies. They all have therapists, executive coaches, not because something's wrong, but because they want to be a better, more successful version of themselves. That's how we perform at this peak level.
I love that you're openly naming and sharing that, because we think of all of these, first of all, we think it as an inherent like failing when we're asking for help. And so the purpose of all of this conversation, when we talk about having a very like performance-based identity, following that prescriptive checklist, and then recognizing that in the middle, like you're supposed to follow the checklist and be perfect, but you also can't ask for help. Like two things cannot exist in the same space.
No,
and absolutely, we look at these things as cost. What is therapy going to cost me? What is that going to cost me? It's an investment. This is an investment in yourself.
I wouldn't be vibrant in my life now and successful according to my list had it not been for therapy. And any successful person I know would tell you the same, that there isn't this thing of, let me just look it up on TikTok and Google and figure it out myself. Like, you need a neutral party inside your head helping you heal past triggers and traumas and develop the emotional resilience and the other mental fitness tools to keep going in life. And I can't say that enough. I am obsessed, Amna. I mean, I feel like this, I know you're calling me as an expert, but me sitting here just learning with you, I love this thing about the list. I'm going to quote you about this because I made my list. And can I share one more thing for our younger sisters? So you're going to be empowered. You're going to do the work. Mindfulness has helped me, therapy, coaching, to create my own list. Do not go back to the system that prescribed you the old list and expect someone to clap for you and say, Acha beta, you're so good, you did it, we're proud of you. You will suffer because my list is different from our traditional culture's list. And so, girl, no matter what outfit I'm wearing, what shoes or purse, I walk into the Daisy thing, you can just feel the judgment coming at you. I don't care anymore, or I avoid some of those social situations because I'm like, they're operating from a different list. These are not my people. So can I share one amazing thing that was on my list, Amna?
Absolutely.
Ever since I was a young girl, like literally in elementary school, my heroes were not like rock stars or actors. And I remember as a young girl telling my mom, I'm going to be on TV one day. And she was like, nobody is going to put a brown girl on TV. You study your medicine and become a doctor. Both of us were right. Became a doctor, ended up on TV. One of my childhood dreams, and I remember touring Rockefeller Center in high school, but I was like, oh, I want to go up to NBC News. So last year, in the first few weeks of the book tour, my list, my childhood dream of going up in Rockefeller Center to go to be on NBC News about my book came true. And if you've never been in there, your name goes on a list from the producer and a security guard comes down where the tourists are and you go up a back way. I was like this Fandu girl. I was with my phone. I'm like, listen, pick out the logo with the carpet or take a picture of me to be elevator. And I know that security guard thought I was mental. And the producer comes out, Dr. Romie, we're so honored to have you. Congratulations on reaching bestseller status with your book. The whole crew is rating it. And this poor guard looked at me like, this crazy girl. That was my list. And do you know people who prescribed to the list that they didn't get it. But my childhood friends who knew me from elementary school, high school, medical school, they literally were cheering me on. They were texting me. They were on FaceTime with me. They were applauding all the videos I was sending because they love you without judgment. And their list is different than my list. But when people really love you, they support your list, even if it's different than theirs.
Beautifully shared. And I'm so wonderfully, like, I'm overjoyed listening to your behind the scenes experience. And I just want to bring attention to something in there that you've shared. It's like two things can hold true because we think in very like black and white dichotomous ways that when we talk about maybe the pressure or the trauma of what is this in existence as a South Asian woman, we might be like dishonoring the cultural aspects of it while there's so much good that is there and we love it and you can thrive, but you also can, and it's okay to recognize that there are parts of it that don't serve you well. There are parts of it that the very real, like there's a whole different conversation surrounding like colorism and all of these other things, like from the time that you're born and you start having like the skin rating that's happening to you to moving forward in life, like everything.
I thought I would never get married because my elders would always be like, "Samli hai, shukar hai ki smart hai, doctor banegi because bichari samli hai." So if you're listening to this podcast from my community and you don't understand my broken Urdu Punjabi that I'm speaking, it's basically that I'm really mediocre and my coloring is really kind of light, kind of dark, samli, like just like in a really disgusting way. And thank God she's smart and going to become a doctor because with those mediocre kind of tan brown looks, we're not so sure you'd find a husband.
Yeah, there is a reason that there is this huge billion-dollar fairness industry that's present in the South Asian community.
Please tell me somebody. I mean, I am counting on my younger millennial and Gen Z sisters to dismantle that. Please, sisters, I'm here cheering you on and thank you for doing that work and using social media for good in that way to dismantle that. But at the same time, those of you listening weren't online with Amna and I when we were just before we started to hit record. There's this immediate sisterhood that Amna and I felt to each other, that there's this bond that we understand each other. And that's something you can't take away. But what works with Amna and I is I had a separate life list and Amna had a separate life list. And we come without ego or judgment, but with just a servant leadership that we honor each other for our separate lists and celebrate each other for those.
So as we inch towards wrapping up, which I don't want to, but I also want to be really respectful of your time.
Could I come back from a part two? Because you had all these thoughtful questions and we didn't get to them. But like this conversation is so raw and authentic. Like I am so glad this is what we're recording.
Absolutely, because those questions are there for a reference, but absolutely, I would love to have you for another conversation that's never going to be a no. So as there's somebody listening out there right now, and you share about women in STEM, we talked about South Asian women, what are some of the pearls you really want for that girl who is struggling with perfectionism? And she's got her list, but she's also looking for like external validation, which you hit on, like no one's going to come and cheer you on, clap you on. What are some of the pointers that you want to leave her with?
Oh, my sister, I'm going to tell you something that I wish someone told me when I was sick. So my burnout got so bad, I got very ill and ended up in life-saving surgery. And I remember walking those hospital corridors and not a single person asked me if I was okay. And I felt so alone. And so if you're burned out or you are bold and brave and you have this unique list, I just hope you can see it in Amna's and my eyes right now and hear it in our voices. You are not alone. I am here for you. Amna is here for you. I don't mean to speak for you, but you wouldn't be doing this podcast if you weren't. Am I right, Amna?
100%.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing is, and be able to start this exercise and look yourself in the mirror and I am here and I care and say it to yourself. And every time I pass another woman who I don't know on the street, in airports and airplanes and the audiences, I literally in my heart, silently or out loud, am saying I'm here and I care. I think start with that radical self-compassion to, I feel so strongly that when we're living a life of somebody else's list and not our own, oh my God, I love this analogy, Amna, bless you. It will lead to busy brain and burnout. Get your brain score. There's an 8-step protocol, labs for you to get. That would be the second thing, and heal the burnout. And the last thing I want to say again is you have the honor and the privilege of defining your own decades in your life. Every culture makes girls feel like you're at your peak beauty in your teens or 20s. That's not true. And that you have to be a certain age by the time you accomplish something, whether it's family or career, you get to define your own decades. And I wish I knew that even 10 years ago. It would have saved me so much suffering. And I hope everybody will share something, because I've been so vulnerable that I'm out there dating and looking at a second chance at love now that I feel like the entrepreneurial roller coaster has calmed down for the moment. I'm 50 and I believe in love, and I want you to define your decades and tell Amna and I on social media, what is it that you're defining this decade? Make your own list and share it with us. I'm here to cheer you on.
On that extremely energetic and palpably joyful note, we will conclude this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today, Romie.
Amna, bless you. Thank you, sister.
This episode is part of a special series and my budding book project on unmasking perfectionism. You might believe you don't have the time or energy to focus on yourself, but this is exactly the right time to get serious about your well-being. You don't have to do it all alone. I'm here to help. If you enjoyed this video and are ready to take the next step, head over to dramnashabir.com, where you'll find free resources you can access right away. The website link is below. Let's get started on your path to thriving.
And I'm going to pause right here because you're frozen. Did you catch what I was just saying?
I did.
Okay. I know Riverside does that sometimes. Sorry. Hopefully your editing team won't get that out. I'm like, oh my God, I had an imperfect moment. The whole thing froze. And we're talking about perfectionism and she's testing me right now about my perfectionism on the podcast.
Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Just a quick reminder, while I am a physician, I'm not your physician, and nothing in this podcast is medical advice or any kind of professional advice. Everything shared here is based on my personal experiences, and the views expressed are entirely my own. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to rate, review, subscribe, and share the show with anyone who might need a little inspiration to redefine their own version of success. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep reimagining success one small step at a time.